Hello, welcome to Subway to California. Two Brooklyn kids take the local to posthumous literary greatness. First off, I'd like to thank the Busby Group for presenting and sponsoring this special event, and Book Trip for co-sponsoring and helping promote it. Our guests are Reuben Leader and Joseph Prisco, and the conversation will last 60 minutes with a 30-minute Q&A. So you'll notice that there is a Q&A. There's a question button at the bottom of your screen. Type your questions at any time. We will answer them at the end of our discussion. Also, this event is being recorded. It will go on Reuben Leader's YouTube page, and we'll email you the link if you're watching to the video following this event, along with all the panelists' websites, social media, and handles to stay in touch. And speaking of Reuben Leader grew up in the indie film world, along with his sister's director, Mimi Leader, and casting director, Geraldine Leader. And they worked on ultra-low budget films made by their father, Paul Leader. Reuben's movie education includes apprenticeships in every department, including writing. He wrote and produced the first 6 seasons of Magnum PI, for which he received 2 Emmy nominations. Darn it, he didn't win. And the Magnum script he wrote and directed received an NAACP Image Award nomination for the guest star. His new novel is You Might Feel a Little Prick. Joseph Prisco is the founding chair of the New Literary Project and author and editor of 16 books, including fiction, prize-winning poetry, memoir, and nonfiction. His most recent work includes Sightlines from Cheap Seats, The Pope of Brooklyn, and Good Family Fitzgerald. He grew up in Brooklyn and Berkeley and now lives in Lafayette, California. He received his PhD from UC Berkeley and has taught English and creative writing from middle school through college and beyond. He also served as a trustee or chair of several nonprofit organizations devoted to education, the arts, theater, and children's mental health. Forthcoming is a book of short stories, a new novel, and a book of poems. And now let's get into it. The first question in everyone's mind is, how did Reuben and Joe meet?
Well,
no pictures, please. No pictures.
Yeah.
All right. I can't laugh because of these teeth. We met Scott Busby of the Busby Group, sent my book to Joe, who read it, and he wrote, I don't know where to look, but he wrote a really incisive blurb. I mean, he wrote a blurb that really got at the essence of the thing. It really touched me. It was, I don't want to repeat it, it's just embarrassing, but I don't know what the etiquette is. So I asked Scott, I'd like to thank this guy. I mean, he gave me his email. So I wrote Joe. We exchanged a few emails, found out we had a commonality, geographically at least, of background, and we both have a other commonality of other interests too. I guess we'll explore those. And so we've become sort of cyber friends. If I ever get out of LA or he ever gets out of or the Bay Area, Lafayette, yeah, I'd like to, we're going to have some drinks.
So I'd like to ask Joe, is that true? Can you confirm this?
I never read his book. I just wrote the blurb.
Oh, man.
But then later I read the book and I said, oh yeah, this is pretty good. This is accurate, as it turns out. But you know, blurb writing is a funny occupation, you know, like monogamy and other things. It's a funny thing to think about because I mean, I can't write things I don't believe in, and every writer wants blurbs, and you hope that they get it. You hope when they say something nice about your book, that's kind of accurate. Well, it was easy to write a blurb about Reuben's book because it is, as I said, sinisterly hilarious and hilariously sinister. And he's clearly, you know, a very smart guy, knows how to write. And, you know, despite his association with Scott Busby, I thought, well, this guy might be all right. And then we got talking about stuff we disagreed about, like baseball. Because as you know,
What can you disagree about in baseball? Enlighten
Dodger
us.
fan. He's a Los Angeles Dodger fan.
But
And
Joe, why are we here as Giants fans? I don't understand.
I know this. This is what I'm talking about.
there's a
So-
simple explanation and a logical one. And if you lived your life in a logical way, like you mentioned, Duke Snyder was your favorite player. He
Yes,
came
he
over,
was.
he moved over he was my favorite player as well. And when we moved to LA, the Dodgers did as well. My dad always said, we moved out here because the Dodgers did. I still believe that. And I mean, and I don't think he was kidding on the square, but no, he was not kidding. And so Duke Snyder played here, and yet you go root for Marshall and those people. But we found common ground. I mean, the game I think is above all that, and we should not be talking about baseball all the time. Otherwise, I hear clicking off. But but
Well,
I
except it does connect to the Brooklyn thing, because when the Dodgers left Brooklyn, I mean, it left and made for a tremendous trauma for the city. I mean, I don't think anybody ever recovered of it in the short term.
and I think they still haven't recovered in the long term. I joined a Facebook group that was I forgot exactly what it's called, but it was a group devoted to the Brooklyn Dodgers club. A buddy of mine who I actually played ball with, an editor, film editor, a very good one, and he posted a photograph in that Brooklyn Dodgers group of him and Sandy Koufax, so just a picture of the two of them. It was taken at Dodger Stadium, and both are wearing LA Dodger hats. This guy got harassed and threatened because that group does not, they call it the baseball team in LA. They don't consider it an extension of the Dodgers. And so I wrote something defending his right. I said, it's not his fault that Sandy Koufax, employed by the Brooklyn Dodgers, and the team moved, he moved with them and had to change caps. And so what's the harm? This is Sandy Koufax, who's should transcend all that. And they go, no, this is about the Brooklyn Dodgers. And if you don't like that, leave. So I left.
Stand your ground, Reuben.
Yeah.
Let's get to the story though, because I don't know if a lot of people realize that the Giants and Dodgers are started out in New York and Brooklyn, and you're both from Brooklyn. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm both Manhattan and Brooklyn, but yes.
And so why, what was the distinction? Well, let's first start off with baseball. What was the distinction back then of being a Giants fan? Did you have to live in Manhattan, or what was the deal?
Queens, basically, right?
Oh, they were in Queens?
No, they were in what was called Coogan's Bluff.
Mhm.
I had a cousin who was a basketball hero. I think he was on the CCNY team who did the point shaving scandal.
Yeah.
And
Great
so he
team.
was a noted sports figure. He took me to a Dodger Giant game, a doubleheader. And Carl Furillo, who had the best arm in baseball, Dodger right fielder, broke his bat in a foul ball in the game. Irving took me into the Dodger clubhouse after the doubleheader. And Carl Furillo said, "Here, kid," gave me his broken bat.
That's great.
I treasured it. So we move out to California years later. I can't keep the bat in my closet. I go away to a YMCA summer camp. My mom cleans out my closet and go, "Well, this bat's broken." She threw it away. It's just, you know, I mean, I eventually, no, I really didn't get over it, but yeah, she threw it away.
Yeah, I'm not over it either. I think you've just hurt my soul. And Joe, you're from Greenpoint, so you should be in essence, you should be a Dodger fan, right? Or is that wrong?
No, I started out when Reuben and I left the city under very different circumstances. But when we got to California, it was, I rooted for the Dodgers. Yeah, of course I did. And so then I saw the light, Reuben. I said, "Oh my goodness, Willie Mays, Candlestick Park." It was amazing. and it was painful at first, but I
Stu
finally
Miller?
made to make the adjustment. Say, okay, I'm a Giants fan, uh, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it from now on. Now, good thing is Reuben and I do agree about another team, and that's the Golden State Warriors,
Yeah.
and we both just admire the hell out of, and they are fun to watch. They're a great team. Again, thank God. Yeah. There are a lot of Warrior haters out there. Hey, I've been season ticket holders since they were winning 10 games a year. So I'm not this is not new for me.
Is being a season ticket holder like rent control? So if you're there when they're losing for a long time, you get to keep your low season ticket rate.
No, in fact, now it's at Chase Center. Now it's absurd. It's obscene. That's obscene. But yeah, but Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I think to get serious here for a second about it's. I mean, there is something tragic about the Brooklyn sensibility, and I mean now it's not. Now it's Brooklyn with an italics with an exclamation point in neon. Now it's where writers are supposed to live and movies are made, including in Greenpoint. And that was not the Greenpoint I grew up in. Greenpoint I grew up in was abandoned factories, oil slick on the water, dive bars, lots of Polish restaurants. It's a pretty Polish town, but the mob ran it. Sonny Francisi was the main guy who sort of ran the neighborhood. So that was the world that I grew up in, and it was and a lot of Catholic churches, of course, which I frequented with great I don't know, great desire for redemption, because when you're 10 years old, that you need that a lot, at least if you're somebody like me. Anyway, so there was so there's something about Brooklyn that I never shook, and I did write a couple of memoirs that were centered in Brooklyn. But anyway, I could go on, but maybe I'll stop.
Well, we were talking about the Brooklyn then versus the Brooklyn now, and the Brooklyn now is kind of like, it seems like a literary mecca.
Right.
If you happen to throw a rock at someone, they are probably trying to get a novel published or have 20 novels published.
Right.
But back then, it's a very different story.
Yeah, it seems like every book jacket you open up now says John Smith lives in Brooklyn with his family and their dog Buck.
Right.
So
But for me, the great turning point in my life, actually as a writer, probably, is I remember I was 11 years old, and we had left Brooklyn under cover of dark because my father was a small-time mobster, and he was on the run from the FBI and the confidential police unit in New York was before Serpico, who was shot a few blocks away from where I lived. And so there's this great story by Thomas Wolfe, Only the Dead Know Brooklyn. And it's in the argot of Brooklynese, the Tings and the Hoyds and the Woids. And it's a great little short story, appeared in the New Yorker. And the story concludes, it goes something like, it'd take a guy a lifetime to know Brooklyn true and true, and he still wouldn't know it at all. And I said, well, this is an amazing thing. They're writing about the Brooklyn I knew. This is somebody, so suddenly there was kind of validation, or I saw a window into, wow, this is a world I can write about. And then I proceeded not to for many years, but it was there. It was there for me, and it was and I think that the all the forces that made Brooklyn an important experience for me, I think have never abated. They've always been there. Or as my friends say, Joe, since you published these memoirs, your Brooklyn accent has come back. And then, you really want to say that? Okay.
And how about you, Reuben? I mean, how do you feel about when you go back to Brooklyn pre-COVID, when we were traveling all over, but going back to Brooklyn and seeing the changes, what is that? Does that lead to kind of like an emotional state of, oh,
Yeah, it was bizarre. My childhood memories are they're fleeting but vivid. I remember my dad taking me to Ebbets Field. I remember Brighton Beach very vividly, where my grandmother lived. And my sister Mimi was directing a film that partly shot there, and I did the production rewrite. So they had me come along to do rewrites on the fly. So we went to Brooklyn and Bulgaria, and there's nothing that links those two places but alliteration.
Right.
And Brooklyn was, there was Nathan's, there was Coney Island, there was all the stuff I remembered, and that pretty much looked the same. The Orthodox Jews, they looked the same, but the restaurants with the ivy and all that stuff, that was really bizarre to me. No candy stores anymore. All that was gone.
Right.
Yeah, so that's all a superficial overview, but I, was a kid, and then was working, and I go, oh yeah, I used to be here, and it struck me as like I was on a different planet a little bit.
that's cool.
Yeah.
How did both of you come into writing? How did both of you realize that, hey, I'm writers?
I think when my dad he started out as an actor and a singer, and when he moved out, to California to seek fame and fortune, I guess, in that area, and he wound up having medical issues. He had inner ear problems and crashed through plate glass windows, and had 5 inner ear operations, but he stayed in show business by directing small theater, then moving on and directing really, really low budget independent films. And so he would write them. I would I would go, okay. I was more into being a musician then, and playing ball. But I remember the first time I figured out I could be a writer, I think it was my 10th grade year at Hollywood High. Some lazy English teacher, we all came in on the first day, and she said, so I'd like you all to just write an essay on what you did over your summer vacation, and start now. And so I'm thinking, all right, so I write the most implausible kinds of stuff, but I kept the tone absolutely real. I just was really laid back with it and factual, but just wrote about, I forgot what it was about, but it was probably like, sacking villages with Genghis Khan or something, but I made it sound real, and I got an A+, and then I went, yeah, I can write. And concurrently, my dad had a really good friend named Bill Norton, who was a forest ranger for the California park system. He was a playwright, just wrote plays, and my dad shot a couple of them as low budget movies. And Bill finally had one of those plays, I think he was 40, that was bought by Burt Lancaster, and he was transformed overnight into a working Hollywood screenwriter. He used to pay me to write type his scripts. So $1 a page, and I was very generous of him. And so I would type the scripts. I was a piano player, so I could type really fast. And so through my dad, and then really particularly through Bill, I really went, I can do this. And of course, my first 300 scripts were all in Bill's voice, but sooner or later I found my own. And so that's how I knew I wanted to be a writer, and that's how I started. And wrote a lot of stuff after that, and got fairly lucky. I outside of the stuff that I co-wrote and did with my dad, I wound up at 22 years old selling something to Alex Karras, who played for the Detroit Lions, but was the guy on Webster with Susan Clark forever, and more famous for punching out the horse in Blazing Saddles. And he optioned a script. He optioned the very first script I wrote that was really in my voice. And then John Wayne's company optioned another script, a baseball script actually, that I wrote. And so I got in that way, and only have gotten out recently.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I always like to hear Reuben talk about the movie life. I mean, it does remind me, however, that Netflix has yet to option one of my books, but it's a very sore subject.
You know,
So
my sister's watching, and you know, maybe she can. I'll give her one. Yeah.
but you know, so for me, it all began with poetry. And I know that, you know, you say you're a poet and there goes the dinner party right away. Everybody has to leave. I gotta go. I can't. My car is over, you know, the meter ran out. But so anyway, talking about high school teachers. So my favorite teacher, I just saw him the other day. The greatest teacher I ever had, period. Still to this day. Gave him some poems over lunchtime, during lunch. And so afterwards, he meets with me and says, "What makes you think these are poems?" And I felt horrible for him that he didn't see the genius behind these poems. So, I mean, yeah, you got to be a little bit crazy. You have to be your own fool to be a writer, right, Tony? Right?
Yes, very much so. I agree, and I am.
So for me, I published a lot of poems in my early 20s. My first book came out when I was in 24 or something. And then I proceeded to get into different things, and had a drug problem for years that I finally managed. I played cards for a living around the world. I played on a team. I had big money backers. We played all around the world. And I got barred everywhere around the world too, which meant I was pretty good, but not good enough to escape. And at one point I had a computer built in my shoes. And I remember being in South Africa with this with this device. And I'm thinking, you know, this is probably not a really good thing to be in South Africa with this at Sun City, which is in apartheid times. This is insane. This life I'm living here is insane. And so then I finished up my PhD. I taught a lot and I lived in a monastery when I was 19 years old. So I wanted everything. I wanted every which way. You know, my brothers were all involved in complicated prison-worthy things. My father, as I said, was a small-time officer. So I loved that life. But I also wanted to be, you know, have the highest grade point average because, you know, I'm a grade grubber through and through. And most grade grubbers don't know that, but I know that about myself. And so I wanted both ways, and it took a long time into my 40s before I sort of got it together, and had a son, and that helped a lot, and marriage helped a lot, and then I started writing fiction, which is a crazy thing to do for me because I was like, that's a sin to write fiction. You should only be writing poetry. But I started writing novels when I was 50 years old. I published my first novel when I was 50. And now I've written 6 or 7 since. But novels and poetry, they're very different. I mean, you gentlemen have written distinguished novels, so you know. But for me, writing a novel is like opening up a business. It's like moving parts and a marketing plan. It's so whereas writing a poem is like shoplifting. It's freeing, it's dangerous, it's everything on the line. So I keep, you know, I work in multiple genres. I'm a failure in many genres, but that's the way I have to do. I have to do what I got to do. So that's the story you asked about how you got to be a writer.
You know, writing, it was a culture change. I'll just briefly say why that is a book and not a screenplay, because it used to be a screenplay. I wrote it as a screenplay,
But
and
are you talking about your book? You might
yeah,
be a
you
little
might.
quick.
I wrote
Okay.
it. I wrote it. It's based on personal experience, and that's really painful, hard-earned experience with the medical profession, and it's based on my late wife's experiences in the cancer industry. And she said one thing that really hit me. She said, "This is the kind of thing," when she got her death sentence, said, "This is the kind of thing that happens to other people." I was thinking the same thing when I was having all my issues, my endless surgeries. So I had to let it out as a screenplay. I never thought of writing it as a memoir. As a book. But if I wrote it as a memoir, for instance, it would just be an angry screed. So I made it really funny. I got my payback, but I also made it. There's quite a bit of pathos in it. So that I can say that word. There's quite a bit of pathos in it, and that's something that actually Joe recognized in the blurb, the ultimate love story in there. And also I wrote, there is a character who represents the nobility of the medical profession, because I finished this right before COVID, and then COVID happens, and those people are dying on the front line. So you have to respect that. But so it was originally a screenplay. It was going to be a movie. The guy in charge, the agent in charge at this huge agency, read the book after I read the screenplay. I'm sorry, after seeing the coverage from it's a big agency, and the coverage is like a book report on how and it was strongly recommend. And I thought we were on our way to getting this made. And he said, my brother's a doctor, and they're not like this. And I go, I don't know your brother. I'm sure he's a fine doctor, but I'm writing from personal experience. I'm laying on a gurney and I hear them washing their hands 10 feet away, trashing their patients, and writers are sponges. Anyway, he wanted me to soften it. And at that point, I had a really good run of selling spec screenplays, and one of them was quite personal to me. And I wound up rewriting it to death. It took a year, different administrations of note givers and executives whose only experience is getting a Harvard Ivy League MBA and then coming out to Hollywood. And so I thought, no, I'm too old. I don't want to soften it. This is really out of my life, and I want people to read it. I want this to be read by more than 10 people who are executives. And so I went and wrote it as a novel. And the first draft, I just let it all spit out in 6 months, because the culture shock is, as a screenwriter, you're trained to be very minimalist. You write what the camera can see and what the sound can hear. Anything else you have to sneak in. But the art is in the way you write the dialogue, the way you craft a story, but you still have to keep it a movie. And so when I decided, okay, he wants me to soften it. No, I'm going to do something I've wanted to do for a long time, decades, and write it as a novel. And so I did first draft in 6 months, and man, was it self-indulgent. I mean, there's adjectives, adverbs, subplots, flashbacks within flashbacks. I just, let me change the tense now, and fortunately I had another surgery. And so I came back to the novel when I recovered and went, wow, this is indulgent crap. So I used the discipline I had as a screenwriter to craft something that people would read. I even forgot what the question was, but that's why I wrote this thing.
Well, that's what comes through in your novel, Reuben. It's the authenticity. It's the pain, and as Mark Twain said, there's no joy in heaven. It's so laughter is what is about pain, and that comes through. And as with most, maybe all interesting, great stories. It's about love, and it's about death, and how we uh, celebrate one to avoid the other. Anyway, there's a lot of, there's so much energy. There's so much. I mean, Reuben can set a scene, and there's so much verbal dexterity. I hate him for it myself.
No,
But,
man. No, I mean, obviously, I'm touched, and thank you for that. But after I read the blurb, I got to read this guy's books. So I've read the two memoirs so far, and I really can't wait to. I don't know how fiction tops it, but yeah, I can't wait to read the next.
well, that's nice of you. Thanks, Reuben.
And balancing the tragedy and the comedy. I think that's something that's so hard to do, and something you tap. How do you balance comedy and tragedy? How do you do it without sounding like what the kids call schmuck?
I can't contextualize it. I can't. I gotta be mystical and voodoo-like and go. I think it's innate in my personality to be able to laugh while you want to cry, and without being too cruel, unless I deserve it. And yeah, so I don't have a formula, but I know it's been in all my work, you know, and I'm gonna have to tamp that down in the next one. We can talk about that later. But yeah, it's just an innate, it's just all my work's been like that. All the serious ones have had humor. The humorous ones have had, here's that word again. I guess it's the word of the day, pathos. Yeah, they do.
Well, I think it's true. I can't prove it, but I would say that the writers that we all love make us laugh and make us cry in equal measure. And Charles Dickens was the one that they first gave that label to. But every writer, I mean, if I look around the 10,000 books, I mean, these are the only books that I want to read and reread. Flannery O'Connor, Joyce Carol Oates, people like that. But it does remind me of a story that since program is called Subway to California, one time I did a reading at Diesel in Brentwood. What's that? The Village Country Mart? Is that what that is there?
Yeah. Where OJ used to live.
Yeah. And Obama was in town. So this was like 2015 or something, like 14, whatever it was. I forget the date. Anyway, so the traffic was, wonderful, as it always is in LA. It was especially wonderful that day getting there. Anyway, so I do the reading, Subway to California. And afterwards, somebody comes up, turned out perfectly, just elegant as can be. And she's been through the reading. And she says, I'm an urban planner. I thought Subway to California was about public transportation. I said, and then she said, she's very smart. She said, so this is really a metaphor for traveling underground through darkness. And I said, you have no idea, but that is the story.
Yeah.
So there you go. So I think Subway to California is about, this is how we got, somehow both Reuben and I took the local or the express, and we got to California, and people can't kick us out now. Now they're stuck with us for the time being.
For the time, for a limited time.
When she said that, were you aware of that type of metaphor, or did she bring that to your attention, Joe?
No, that's what I live and breathe all day long.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a totally true story. I mean, I could have, I wish I could have made up that story, but it was so wonderful. And this is, I mean, maybe Reuben and Tony, you have this kind of experience that somebody gives you a story like that, and you say, I can't use it because it's like too perfect.
Yeah,
People would think I made that stuff up, but no.
It's true. It's true.
This must happen all the time on the set, right? Or in the movie industry. Well, you guys both made movies, so you know this world.
Yeah.
I think Reuben has more of a handle on it than I do, but that's
Yeah,
your cue, Reuben.
okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the lady who didn't get the metaphor is obvious in the title, and I just thought, well, that's obtuse of her. But I've had, I've had experiences where if you wrote it down in a book or a script, I crashed on one of my encounters with the medical profession was in I was flying to Europe on a Sunday, but I had a bad cold. So I went into my doctor and wanted to be checked out to make sure I could fly. And then I said, oh, by the way, lately when I've been walking my dog, I felt my heart racing, and I kind of find myself on the sidewalk, and I obviously have been unconscious for a couple of minutes. And I go, is this anything I should worry about? Guy freaked out and sent me to a cardiologist in the building, and he put me on a stress echo test, which is when you're on a treadmill running. And so he was a very young Asian doctor. Probably I was his first patient ever. The nurse was a white middle-aged lady who had probably seen it all. And so I'm running, and they keep making it higher and higher, and I'm doing fine. And so he says to her, and this is something you can't write. There's a crash cart outside, and he said, so I forgot her name. Have you ever had to use that crash cart outside? And she said, I think a few years ago, but I wasn't here that day. I was off. They had to use it. And then he turns to me and says, okay, just one more level, Mr. Leader, and one little degree higher, more incline. And then I see there's no reason why you can't fly to Europe on Sunday. Next thing I know, I'm on my back on a table, and he's just like punching me and going, sorry. So I crashed. And I wound up having a ventricular tachycardia, which apparently is very dangerous. And but they fixed it, and my whole family came down. But if I wrote that setup in a screenplay, a book, or on a mural, no one would. But that's just bad writing to set up somebody crashing on a cart. So yeah, that's I think that's in the neighborhood of your viewer at your event going, is this a metaphor?
Well, but the interesting thing is that when you write fiction, it's you're lying all the time. You have to, by definition, it's made up, and truth obtrudes, and there's a lot of autofiction in this world. A term I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah.
But but this is the way we tell the truth, through lies, and we use bits and pieces of our lives to get all this out. Henry James, it was Randall Jarrell defined a novel, a great writer himself. He said a novel is a piece of fiction of some length with which something is very wrong. And when you're writing a novel, you're not going to get it all. It's not quite, it's like scary when you reread what you wrote 10 years ago. So now the interesting thing about a memoir is that you're telling the truth. That's your job. Now, unless you're certain writers, I'm not going to mention and make stuff up.
James Frey.
Yeah, okay. And
James Fry?
Fry, is it Fry or Frey? I can't remember.
Yeah.
So you have an obligation to your reader to tell the truth to the extent that you know it. Now, memory is a funny thing. So what do we remember? What do we know? But you have a pact with yourself and with your reader to tell the truth. Russell Baker said, though, nobody's life makes any sense, just tell a good story. So all these impulses are flying all over the place. Well, but it's all about truth telling in different guises. And I think about all the stuff that, like, for instance, subway to California ends with my father he has Alzheimer's, and I'm taking him to the track. It's Kentucky Derby Day. And he couldn't speak that well, but he could handicap. He could do the racing for him. And so I said, well, I like the 9-horse. And he says, it's a good horse, not my horse. And he says, who you like that? He says, I like the 4. You should get down on no, he doesn't say get down on the 4, but the way he said it was, I'm supposed to get down on the 4. So I run to the window, and at 3:23, get down on the 4. Race goes off at 3:24. He picks the winner. Unlike millions and millions of people in the country who bet that race, he picked Super Saber. And that name still gives me a chill to remember that was the last sort of big conscious decision he ever made in his life. And to pick that resonant image will always stay with me. And that's all true. I didn't make that up. I could have made it up for a novel, yeah. but I didn't. So, I mean, it's like reminiscent of when we were running out of New York, and the police were around the house in East Islip, and he runs into the woods on his way to California. He says, go back to grandma's house and don't take no shit from nobody. And those are words that have always stayed with me. They happen to be true. You asked for it, Tony. You asked for it, you got it. That's all I got.
No, it's beautiful though. And and that brings up questions like, when we are losing mental capacity, are we open to other forces out there where he can understand what's happening on the track in a different way and see the horse in a different way? That's the questions that kind of come up, because it's just like they're functioning on a different level, maybe almost a different plane,
I think so. Yeah, and I wrote a whole novel about Alzheimer's, about a mobster who has Alzheimer's. He calls it the Alzheimer, and he can't put it. Yeah, you do get. It's a very famous book, helping book. It was a 36-hour day. So these were experiences. My mother had Alzheimer's, so I took care of them both. All my brothers were dead at that point. Yeah, it's a sacred and terrifying window into life. But I just read something that Viagra reduces the chance of Alzheimer's by 70%.
Wow.
Now, I want to know
how much do you need to take for
that. Yeah. I guess I'll take my chances. What?
This talk is sponsored by Viagra. Keep your brain healthy and your spirits up.
Just what happens after the 4 hours, though.
Yeah, right. But this does remind. I just read this cool category. Reuben, you'd be interested in this. The sabermetric category I never heard of before. To go back to baseball just for a second, because it kind of is this category. I'm sure you know this. You're the jock and the baseball guru. It's called the Index of Self-Destructive Acts. Have you heard this?
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah,
it's fascinating. The Index of Self-Destructive Acts has to do with what a pitcher can do to screw up things. Hit a batter, balk, drop the ball, so there's some kind of quotient. And I don't know what the metric is for this. So anyway, this category, Reuben, Tony, maybe we need to use this for our writing careers, the Index of Self-Destructive Acts when it comes to writing.
I think I have an innate sense of how to do that, but this was a destructive act. This is actually Steve Garvey. I decapitated him in '93 and froze him and unfroze him for this. And Steve.
Yeah, he's a
Actually,
oh
this was a dummy. This was my very first mainstream job was on the Incredible Hulk, mainstream job. And last season we did it. And of course, when in some shows in like its latent seasons, they do a wax museum show. So they let me keep the dummy, the Dodger hat is mine. But
Well, I'd have to agree with you that, someone with a Dodger hat is a dummy.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Trevor Bauer has tested me, Um,
Yeah. Oh, really? So you're going to come to our side then, huh?
no, Trevor Bauer, that was really tough. And then when the allegations, when the facts came out about what he did, at least he'll never pitch for the Dodgers again, and undoubtedly will never. Well, not undoubtedly. Who the hell knows? There's always greed. But hopefully he doesn't pitch another pitch in baseball ever again. But right before the lockout, I read the Dodgers inquired about the availability of Carlos Correa, shortstop of the 2017 cheating Astros, who never took accountability, who told can you swear in these things, but told Bellinger to go bleep himself, because the Dodgers are naturally upset. So if the Dodgers actually signed Carlos Correa, I would seriously consider,
divorce.
65 years of fanship over that.
Yeah.
I would seriously go, how can I root for, because these owners, these GMs, they're supposed to be custodians of a once a proud progressive franchise. And they go get a cheater like Carlos Carrera, and he's probably not watching. So, but he's been called worse. But yeah, I don't know how I'd root for the team. Seriously, that would be that's a deal breaker.
Okay. So
along with beating up women, of course, that's another deal breaker. So, but that guy's gone, and I hope he finds himself in a small dark room.
okay, but gentlemen, so I'll go to a literary subject here. So which sport lends itself most immediately to fiction or poetry or anything?
I think baseball clearly.
That's what people talk about. Baseball.
Yeah.
That's the assumption. Football, harder to write about.
Well, North Dallas 40 well, I read it when it came out, so who knows if it held up, but it was a good book. It was actually a good movie.
Billy Lynn's short halftime walk is pretty good. It's not really, it's sort of about football. There's not a lot of basketball fiction. The Basketball Diaries by Carol, it's not really about basketball. Basketball's too quick, I think, right? There's not a lot of time for reflection.
I think so. Yeah, you look at the Mark Harris books of the 50s, the most famous ones, Bang the Drum Slowly,
right.
Which they also made a movie about with De Niro. And,
right.
Yeah, it was, but it's a slow book, but it's a beautiful book. I have a bunch of Mark Harris books. Baseball lends itself to really great writing.
So what's interesting, baseball, because there's time.
Yeah.
And you have time to think, and time to go get a drink, and then time to be bored, which is very useful reading my fiction.
Yeah.
So that's what I find. What I love about baseball, it's an excruciating game. And you know this, Reuben, from coaching, and I've coached a little bit. It's just a completely boring experience, interrupted by moments of sheer terror.
Yeah, but I don't think the moments are boring. I relish those moments because you're studying a pitcher. You're going, how am I going to hit him? What's he doing when he's 3-0? What's he throwing when he's 3-1? Everybody else is joking around, waiting for something to happen. I, as a hitter, would always be watching the pitcher, watching where the fielders would position against lefties. I was a lefty hitter. And so I never thought 1 second of it was boring, which is why I have a really long, boring flashback in the book to a softball game.
That's right. No, I like that scene. But so were you the kind of guy who stepped out of the box a lot and the human rain delay? Were you that kind of guy?
No, I would never talk to a catcher. Catchers always try to talk to you to mess with your concentration. And I would ignore catchers. I would ignore umpires talking to me, other than to go, Nelson, that was at my neck, but no, I'd be talkative after it was over. The only talking I'd do during the game was about the game.
Let your bat and glove do the talking for you. That's what
Yeah. Or, that left fielder's playing way off the line, try and drop one, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, throw that
there-
pitch
yeah.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I took it too seriously, but I love doing it.
It's a great experience. All my experience was about baseball was failure. I couldn't see the damn ball. But I stood there, I waited, I tried to hit it, I just couldn't
Yeah.
see it. And if you threw a curveball,
Oh,
where did it go? Where did it go?
you, as a lefty hitter, and if you're facing a lefty pitcher, which is why I was relatively successful throwing left-handed, but you face a lefty pitcher, they could tell me a curveball's coming. I'm still bailing, But I was able to, I don't know if you can see it. James Wong Howe came in and lit the set here. He was a cameraman from the 40s. Anyway, but I got this eye that's over here and has given me some problems in elevators where people are going, what the hell are you looking at me for? And I'm not. The eyes just went over there when I was 3 years old. I had an operation and went back, but in my 30s, it came back. So I'm essentially seeing with one eye. But my party trick is I can go like that and the eye will come back. So I'm able to, at the expense of a really bad headache, if I can really concentrate, I can bring the eye back for 10 seconds, 15 seconds while the pitcher's winding up. And so I can hit a ball. I can take a basketball shot relatively accurately, but it really hurts. And but I don't know where that's coming, where that was going to, but yeah.
Talking about vision. We're talking about vision,
Oh,
seeing
vision,
things that
yeah.
are there, seeing things that are not there, which is
Yeah.
also the job of a writer.
Yeah.
Seeing things clearly and seeing things and putting things there that you've imagined. It's a great thing.
And we just wanted to note we have 5 minutes left in the conversation. So for those of you who want to get your questions in, we'll answer them and start answering them in 5 minutes. What's interesting about baseball is like a lot of my writer friends don't follow any other sports, and I really don't follow any other sports, but I follow baseball religiously. Why?
It's a religious activity. It's ritual.
It's a secular
Yeah.
religion.
Yeah, yeah, it is a secular religion. Yeah.
I think well, you brought out how the game's slow, the season's slow. It feels like a novel because we into the stories of the players. It's like I'm emotionally invested, and I don't know why. I'm not a jock,
I
but
have a really important point to make about that. It brings people together. There is a scene in the Billy Crystal movie where they went out to a dude ranch and they're riding horses, and the guy was saying, I can only connect with my father because on baseball, we disagreed politically. I was protesting Vietnam, whatever, but baseball brought them together. I got a really good friend, he's probably watching this, he lives in Detroit, and politically we're miles apart, but he was the catcher on this team I was on. And we've remained good friends, but we have a kind of, I guess, a tacit agreement never to talk about politics or anything like that, but we'll talk about baseball, and baseball has a way of just bringing people together that I think no other sport can do. And I don't know, whatever very few human endeavors can do as well. So I think that's one of the beauties of the game, because it's so rich and it's encompassing, and it allows all different kinds of people to be invested in it and emotionally invested in it.
So what does that have to do with writing, you guys? When you produce something, and what's your hope, your desire for a readership? What do you want from your reader?
I don't think, I'm not sure I'll write another baseball scene ever in a book, but I wrote this one. So I don't think it has anything to do with me writing. other than it was an experience I had. I gave it to another character, and then
No, but in general,
yeah,
writing fiction, what's that have to do with you made a moving point about how baseball
yeah.
brings communities together. So the thing about reading is that this is a very atomized experience. You're on your own. But you somehow you're in a community of people too at the same time.
Maybe because writing is lonely and it's such an alone experience. So we get to be friends with these mega baseball stars, but they don't know we're friends with them. But we know that we're friends with them. I'll talk to my therapist more about that. That might be another brain situation. That's
It's might be an unanswerable question.
Our time is almost up. Our 50 minutes are almost up.
Oh, I thought you were talking about our lifetimes.
Therapy. Yeah, right.
Oh, dear Lord.
Yeah,
We're all gonna get on the crash cart. Is that what it's called, Reuben?
Twilight Zone episode, yes.
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be a great conversation? The last conversation 3 writers ever had, they all died at the same time.
Yeah, so it's a never-ending Zoom. You can't. It's like it's like speed. If the bus goes below 50 miles an hour, everybody dies. So I think, yeah, if we stop the Zoom, we all die.
Now,
we can pitch that to Netflix.
Now, speaking of baseball and speaking of Magnum PI, we need to get this in because you were producer and also writer on Magnum PI, Reuben. Why the Detroit Tigers? Why did Tom Selleck wear the Detroit Tigers baseball cap?
All right, he was raised in the San Fernando Valley and somehow became in his youth a huge Detroit Tiger fan. So he incorporated that into the show. He also loved to play baseball. We were on the Magnum softball team together. The Teamsters, who were basically run by the Samoans, they ran the team. They batted me third and Tom fourth. And I don't think it's because I was a producer and Tom was the star. It's that we were the only lefties, and we played at this place called Kapiolani Park, and right across from the ocean, and the trade winds blew. You put anything in the air to right field, it was a home run. So we did that, and the bastards at the park then changed the rules and called it a ground rule double because we were hitting too many home runs. But yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, basically he was a Tiger fan, and if I was a Tiger fan, it wouldn't have made no difference, you know. Or if I was a Blue Jay fan, no, the Tigers were getting into the script. We actually had an episode with Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker guesting. Not natural actors, but they're really good guys.
That's cool. So let's start a little bit of the questions. This is from anonymous attendee. I don't know what the origin of the name attendee is, if it's Belgium or Dutch. Anonymous attendee. Reuben, oh, well, we went through this a second ago, but Reuben, and maybe you can expand on it. Who is that behind you? Actually, her name is Sally. Sally asks, who is that behind you?
This is from a wax museum. This is an extra on a 1980 episode of The Incredible Hulk. And I was a kid. It was my first mainstream job. The prop department said, "Hey, you want it, kid?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I've had this thing I hate to say it, I've had this thing for 41 years. And so this is a human being, or if he's still alive, this is a human being. He was an extra on the Wax Museum episode.
You know, if I had that in my house, I would have the urge to kiss him and put it on Instagram. Not making any suggestions. No. Go for it, Reuben.
No, not in public. Not in front of the millions of people who are watching this. No, I can't.
Yes, exactly. We need to keep our dignity somewhat.
Yeah.
This is from Carla Malden. I've had her on Drinks with Tony before. She's a great writer. She asks, as a fellow screenwriter turned novelist, did you find turning your screenplay into a novel liberating or confining?
Extremely liberating. extremely liberating. You know, you're stuck with it used to be 120 pages. Now they like them at about 104 pages. And so there were so many stories, there were so many things that spoke to enriching the characters and making them who they are that I can do in a book that I never could have done in the screenplay. So I got religion, and I want to write nothing else but novels from as long as my brain keeps working.
That's cool.
Nothing else is working, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Hi, Carla.
Yes, hi, Carla. Thank you for the question.
Hi, Carla. Okay, this one's from Ken, asking about the novel You May Feel a Little Prick. They're asking if it's a mystery novel.
It sort of defies a lot of genres. They asked me to pick out from 3 different codes of numbers, you know, what it is. So it's not it's a medical satire on some level, of course. It's a crime story on one level, of course, because there are bodies and our protagonists are body adjacent, so they're hunted. And so it's kind of a crime story. It's kind of a Sinclair Lewis thing. And as Joe pointed out, and I knew because I was writing the characters of Nick and Julie it's an unshakable love story, and I tested them so many times, and they found hope. She also represents the nobility of the profession. So yeah, it's a genre. It's unfortunately not a genre book, but you see somebody like John Irving, I think if he started out today, because his books are all over the place, whatever one thinks of them. Some of them are wonderful, but they completely defy genre. And fiction has become so balkanized in terms of when you're in a bookstore, this section, or on Amazon's got thousands of categories. This is number 24 in 14th century Catholic fiction. You know, it's really become balkanized, and so I kind of I struggled with finding a genre for it. So yeah, it's partly crime, but
Are you
the real
thinking
crime,
genre when you? Oh, go ahead. I'm
the
sorry.
real crimes committed by some people in white coats and some insurance people, health insurance people.
When you're writing, are you thinking of the genre, or is that something that comes at the end of the novel when you're like, oh, wait a second, this might be blank?
Since I've only written one novel, I wasn't thinking genre. I was thinking my history, my wife's history. Screenplays, yeah, of course you feel you're thinking genre. You're going to go, I'm writing a love story, or I'm adapting this memoir by a friend of Woody Guthrie's and his experiences in the Merchant Marines. I know exactly what I'm writing, and some of the original screenplays. Yeah, I know I'm writing a film noir, and I'm setting out to do that. And yeah, but the next book's gonna be it'll fit into a genre because it's based on my parents' experiences in World War II. My mom was a Belgian citizen. She was arrested and her family was murdered. She was in 4 camps. She was in Auschwitz. She was in the death march out of Auschwitz and to Bergen-Belsen, where she was liberated by the British. My dad from Brooklyn enlisted when he was 17. He had to get my grandmother's permission. And he became a combat medic in Patton's army. He was with the first troops that went into Buchenwald. The Germans had run, and he's on video talking about the first thing he saw was bodies as high as a 2-story building. So he stayed there for months, giving blood, nursing the survivors back to health. So I know I'm writing a historical love story next, and which won't be that nearly as funny as this thing is, but it's definitely in a genre, and it's in a genre that I'm familiar with, and obviously them being my parents, but also I'm familiar with the history, and I'm familiar with my parents' history, and let's take this back to Brooklyn. My dad was from Brooklyn. He was from Brighton, and Lincoln High, where Stephen Marbury went to school, coincidentally, back to basketball. And yeah, so the next one will be a genre book, but a good one.
I had you on my radio show before, and there's a story I would love for you to answer on. This is your mom made one choice that kept her alive, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, you're remembering right. She befriended a Dutch girl when they were packed like sardines on those trains that took them to that took her to Auschwitz ultimately. And people died in those trains. They were packed in so tightly they suffocated. Babies died. So they reach Auschwitz is in Poland, and I've been there. They get out. Her new friend is going, I'm really tired. There's all these people getting on these trucks, and let's just go on the trucks. I can't walk anymore. And my mom, she was very tough, and she had an innate sense of like something's wrong. And she said, let's ask this guy over here. And it was a German officer. And she goes, which way do we go? And he said, he looked at them both. He said, you're young, you're healthy, you work, you go that way. If you got on the trucks, they were going straight to the chambers, gas chambers. And so that's how she survived. That's why I'm here right now.
When does this book come out? Because I can't wait to read it. Because
I'm starting Christmas Day, and various future impending operations permitting, it'll be done as soon as I can. It's all in me. I've been thinking about this for quite a number of years.
Well, Joe and I are going to be at your place when you're healing and taking notes. So stay on track.
Okay.
Right, Joe? Do you mind if I recruit you for that?
I got your back, man. Don't worry. We got it.
Do we have any more questions out there? Jen, what do we do? Jen's been giving me cues through this. She's like, you got 5 minutes. Remind the folks this. She's been wonderful. What we do, Jen goes, keep going. She's like, keep going. Okay, that sounds great. We'll keep going. What's Warriors, on your Santa hat there, Joe?
It's a Warriors.
Yeah, I was wondering too.
Warriors.
Oh, is that the Warriors? Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I don't follow baseball. I'm sorry. I mean basketball. Oh my God. I almost pretended like I didn't follow my religion. What question would you ask yourselves if you were me?
That's to Joe.
Yeah, that's
no,
always,
here's a good one.
That's always a question. So So are writers all insane?
So I'll pretend like you didn't say that. Reuben, Joe, are writers all insane?
To a point. I mean, some writers go and kill themselves. I guess they're insane. I like to think my characters are more insane than I am, or some characters are more insane than I am. But I think you have to have that some little germ of insanity in you to be able to write those characters, certainly. But in terms of me being insane, I try and bottle it up pretty much.
I think that maybe writers are this. Maybe they're least insane when they're actually writing. I don't know about you guys, but you know, we're not a very noble species, a subspecies of the human race. You know, a lot of writers think it's a zero-sum game. You get something, you get a sale, you get something, you get, and I don't. You know, but the actual moment when you're, for me, the actual moment when you're writing, that's what it's all about. And 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 to write a great sentence, what you think is a great sentence, a paragraph, a page, a character looms in your brain, an image, it's a word. It's exhilarating.
It is.
Now it
It's,
doesn't last. It doesn't last.
no, you have
You
that
go
hell
back
yeah,
again. You go
you have
back
that
again.
hell yeah moment, and then you go to pieces when someone reads that sentence or paragraph, and go, yeah, it could be funny or whatever, but you know you nailed it. And who cares what anyone thinks? You know you nailed it, and that is that's a better feeling than hitting a home run. I mean, it's better than quite a few things. I love it.
So, I mean, the thing about writers is you have to be monomaniacal. It's all about Moby Dick. It's all about this is my life. I'm not that kind of writer, actually. I need to be engaged in outside my head, uh, outside my imagination. So I write this continuously all day, even while I'm chairing this nonprofit I started, New Literary Project, and it's sort of it's helpful. It can be annoying when I have to deal with issues, fundraising, whatever has to event planning. But it's also kind of it's a relief from imagining and writing sentences. Now the trick is for me, the trick is to balance that. And so I I write a lot, and I get a million emails a day and a lot of phone calls, and I learn stuff. I mean, it's been a great education running this nonprofit, and a great honor. I'm very pleased with how much we've been able to contribute, and uh, it's a balancing act, and I'm glad I did it.
You feel like they feed each other, the writing feeds the nonprofit kind of feeds the writing.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the nonprofit's mission is really it's about people bravely writing their hearts out across generations, across communities, across divides, and it's we're driving social change through unleashing artistic power, and that's to lift up a literate democratic society. So these are all big abstractions, but when we put it into action, we lead writing workshops. We're partnering with the English Department of Cal. We lead writing workshops at places like Contra Costa County Juvenile Hall or Girls Inc. These are all girls who are going to be the first generation to go to college. We do the Joyce Carol Oates Prize every year. We're in the middle of picking our 6th prize this year. It's a $50,000 award to an emerged and still emerging writer. And then we do other stuff. Actually, this year we're doing something new where we publish kids and Joyce Carol Oates and famous writers in the same anthology every year. That's always a kick. And this year we're offering fellowships to writers who teach high school full time, summer fellowships. And so we give out $5,000 fellowships to writers. This year it'll be in California. Next year we'll go nationwide. So we do a lot of stuff, and we're busy, and I like starting stuff. I mean, maybe that's the commonality, writing a poem, writing a novel, and creating a social organism. I'm good at. I hope none of my board members are listening to me, but so I love creating stuff. I just love it.
Here, I'm going to do Tony's job for a second. You should say the name of that website, because
Oh yeah.
I went out, I checked it out, and this will sound so cloying, but the work you guys do, serving those underserved communities of writers and people who want to write, it was thrilling to me. And so say the website so people can go there. It's really
It's New Literary Project. It's all over the place. You can't escape it when you see that New Literary Project. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And
It's fantastic.
thank you for saying that. You know, but Tony's show, Drinks with Tony, is pretty damn good too. That's
Oh,
that's
shucks.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're unique.
Thanks, guys. Oh. Oh, we got a question from Scott. This question is directed to Joe. Joe, what is your next book? Are you on a next book right now?
So I've got my agents got my new novel and a book of short stories, soon to be rejected by all the finest publishers in the country. But one thing is about not to go pandemic. Thanks, Scott, for the question. One question is, so we're in the early stage. And by the way, dealing with publishers these days, everybody, that's pandemic brain. Everything is slow. They can't make decisions. But for me, as soon as the pandemic hit, I started writing stories, short stories. Short story is a very mysterious genre to me. It's more like a poem than it is a novel. That's one thing, and but it was so empowering to do something new, because my goodness, here the planet's dying, the pandemic is going to destroy us all, and I'm going to write stories. Really? Well, why would I do that? And then I remember what, to get fancy pants here, in the Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio, the 14th century, he writes about the plague in Florence, where people are dropping on the street everywhere. So what happens? These 10 young millennials go out to the countryside to tell each other stories, to live through the plague. And it's all about and as he says in the first line of the Decameron. In fact, I've got it right here. I'm going to quote it because I love it. So,
Sounds like Chekhov to me.
oh yeah, Chekhov is right down there too. All right, now this is silly.
Hold up the book for us, Joe, so we can see.
Oh, this is the anthology of our. Let me get this here.
It's very not in focus.
Yeah,
It's very not in focus.
Yeah, it's not in focus.
Okay, I didn't time this one at all. So he said, oh, here's the first thing he says. I can say it in Italian, but I don't want to show off. But he says, the first line of the Decameron is, it's an essentially human thing to have compassion for those in distress. It's an essentially human thing to have compassion for those in distress. And by definition, people in Florence were all dying. They were in distress. And what do these people do? They go out to the countryside and they tell each other great, body moving, heroic tales. It's great stuff. Thanks for the question, Scott.
I feel like storytelling gets us through the hard times in life. We're aching for good stories. We have our go-to movies or our go-to books when we're having rough times in life, and it's just like, I'm gonna read this, or I'm gonna watch this, because I know it will take me to a level where I won't feel as much pain as I do at the moment.
Yeah. When I get depressed, there's a movie I always watch, and I'm being confessional here. I watched The Thing, the Howard Hawks movie. Do you know this one, Reuben? The Thing, 1954.
Yeah.
It's an amazing movie. James Arness as The Thing, and it's got amazing snappy patter between our Air Force officers and the scientists, and it's just amazing. It's an amazing, beautiful movie. And of course, you got the villain, and the villain has a goatee, and and the love interest is a PhD female who's walking around serving coffee. It's just so crazy, wonderful movie. I just love this movie. Anyway, that's my. Sorry.
I speaking of movies, I saw Billy Wilder's The Apartment for the first time this last year. I've never seen it in my life, and it's screening up the street from me in a couple weeks. doing a retrospective or whatever. So I'm going to go watch The Apartment with Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. And I just know that no matter how bad my day is or how mediocre my day is, my heart will be filled with joy for 92 minutes.
It will be. It
Yeah.
will be.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great movie.
What a
Great movie.
writer he is.
Great movie.
Was.
What's one of your go-tos, Reuben, now that we're all confessing here?
Man, I just saw a movie I never saw with Laurence Olivier, and you're going to think of Shakespeare, but he plays a failed music hall comedian.
Right.
And it's called The Entertainer. We saw that about a few days ago, and boy, that movie blew me away. It was originally a play by John Osborne, and the dialogue was just fantastic. The insights into humanity and dreaming and the selfishness and everything just mixed up all around. And it took place in Brighton, England, at a dreary resort town at that time in the 50s. The overarching thing was the 56 war that Britain and France were fighting with Egypt at the time. And he's involved with trying to just mount shows. That movie really got to me. I talked about that pretty inarticulately, but it's a movie people should see. It shows up on TMC.
Well, and of course, The Godfather. Can't leave the conversation without mentioning Coppola's genius.
Yeah.
Well, what advice, people watching they may be watching and going, you know what, I'm insane. I want to be a writer too. And what would you tell someone who is watching this and just like hasn't thought about writing, or writing hasn't kind of been in their zeitgeist? What would you tell them how would you get them to start writing? What would you give them? What advice would you give them to a new writer who wants to kind of just become a writer?
Sooner or later you're going to need a good publicist, and that's where Busby comes in. He's good.
Yeah.
A good publicist is everything. That's so true.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to go in a completely different place, but it is weird though. The part I've been really longing to write, but I've spent the last few months doing what I have to do to make people aware of this book, and that's like a full-time job. So I've had its run now, and I can't wait to get back to writing. But what I would tell somebody starting out, it'd be pretty, kind of pedantic of me to do so because everybody's different, but you have to be prepared for a lot of rejection, and you got to be tough because you will get a lot of rejection. I remember before I made it, this is when you had to actually send stuff in by mail. You got letters back by mail. Although the writing's good, blah, 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 it's not for us at this time. I've had about 75 of them, and I was a house painter at that time, among other things. And I just had a blue and green bathroom, and I would just tape everyone up on the thing until it got to about 75. And then I finally sold something, and I just burned them all. But there could have, that moment never could have happened. But so you gotta be persistent. You gotta go, okay, I don't want to fall back and work in a bank. I don't want to, you gotta like kind of, I know at least for me, I did this. I'm not going to get a degree. I'm not going to have a fallback position. I don't want a fallback position. I believe in writing so much. I believe I can do this. I believe I want to direct things. I can produce things. I write things, and I know I'm good at it. And you can't fool yourself. You have to know you're objectively good. If you're just playing around, it's going to be crap. Or if enough people tell you it's crap, then you got to listen to them and stop. But if you really believe what you can do, and you develop a sense of craft to go along with what you want to say, then just keep doing it. But expect to expect nothing. Expect nothing, and just keep writing. I know. I sound like a lot of fortune cookies right there rolled into one.
So I mean, I taught for a long time and heard versions of this question, although no student ever came up to me, why should I be a writer? I mean, my former students who became immensely famous writers, they never asked that question. But I would say that when I gave that assignment, when I gave an assignment, I would say a version of leave it all on the field. Don't hold back.
Yeah.
You're always playing for keeps. You have to always play for keeps. Otherwise, it's not worth it. At least you have that when the day is done.
Exactly.
I played for keeps.
Well, what you said in 7 words, yeah, it was nice.
What's so interesting about the media of film versus the media of novel. So the novel is a one person thing. Our name is on it. We live and die by it. If it sucks, we suck. If it's great, we're great. But on a film, there's hundreds of people employed. So many things can go wrong. So many things can go right. And I think that's kind of the beauty of the novel. And also, I think it brings us back to baseball. And one of the reasons I love baseball is you can go to the Hall of Fame if you only hit 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
If you were doing 30% in baseball, you're in the Hall of Fame. And if you're doing 30% in writing, you're the New York Times bestseller list. So there's kind of, it feels like a comparison of sorts.
Although it is a discredited stat now, but yes, your point's well taken.
I think that was an index that belongs on the index of self-destructive acts there, right there, what you just
Exactly.
did, Tony.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of self-destructive acts, thanks, fellas, for doing this.
How true it is.
Yeah. And that concludes our event. I want to thank everyone for attending. Have a good evening. And this is everyone will receive an email of everyone's websites, also a video of tonight following the event. Thank you. I appreciate your candid words. You fellas are easy to talk to. You make life easy for people like me. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
See you around. Thanks, Reuben.
Thank you, Joe.
Ciao, ciao.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye-bye, everybody.